Why, hello there. Welcome to this week's weekly author update by our Brady Frost. That's me. So, we're just out here hanging outside. Probably hear the breeze blowing. That's cool. Whatever. Anyway, I'm sorry I'm late. The last video was probably supposed to be on Wednesday. I should narrow down a day for that. Maybe on Fridays. Maybe I'll do Fridays because Friday's probably a little easier for me.
Hello, you sure handsome. My name's Marshmallow. I'm a turkey. I think that you and I could get along fantastically together. I'm just going to come over here and snuggle up next to you. Oh, thank you. So glad you like me.
Car driving by. A car is driving by, yeah. So anyway. Alright, so let's discuss how I did last week on my writing goals. Chlorophyll 9, finished that up, and now it's out there with the beta readers having all the edits done. So, check. Goal complete. My daughter did find one mistake, but my dad managed to find like 7. So, awesome. Thanks, Dad, for taking the time to read and find all those errors. Cover art. Progressing along. I did make the decision I'm going to go ahead and do the novelette and then have that as part 1 of the novel, and part 2 and part 3 have kind of been laid out. I need to define exactly what's going on in each of those, but I have a pretty good idea, so I'm pretty excited about that. And I kind of covered an issue that has been bothering me for a little while. I listen to a lot of writing podcasts when I'm thinking about it and making that a part of my schedule, which actually is a huge benefit to me. But what I've noticed also is that some of these podcasts, podcasts are awesome, but they're also not awesome sometimes. So if you spend a lot of your time listening to products that are going to help you solve all these problems with your writing, you know what? I think, honestly, elbow grease is probably the best product you need. If you can buy some elbow grease, but it has to be your own, if you really care about your writing career. No product that you buy is going to be the magic cure-all. So my Hunting the Muse post this last weekend was for, listen to the podcast, get that writing fellowship, mentorship going on. That's great. Just be careful when it comes to the products. Filter out what you need and what you don't need and what's going to be useful for you. That's the best thing that I can do, is just put a word of warning out there. So, Hunting the Muse blog post, check. Another thing on my list was to beta test my daughter's game. She refuses to come on this video this time, so if you guys want to leave a comment and say that she should, that'd be great. I was able to go out and play her game, which was pretty freaking awesome. She starts you out in a cellar, and you have to talk to this cat, who explains that things might not be as they appear. If you're talking to a cat, things aren't as they appear. Internet cat. Internet cat. Then you have to go talk to a blue flame. And the blue flame, when you talk to it, ports you out to your house, which is pretty awesome. If you think about the functionality requirement, that you have to go and interact with this NPC, and then an event happens. So we're having a trigger, and then an action. So that's pretty cool. So she did that, and then she had various items around the house that you could interact with. Now I got excited. I went around, did a quick look around, and then I ran outside. I was looking at the garden, the trees. She's like, you gotta go back inside. You're not done yet. So I went back inside and poked around and looked at, opened my dad's mail. And there was a knife on the counter, and there were some jars that I could look into. But overall, it was a very impressive effort on her part. I had purchased RPG Maker VX Ace last Christmas on Steam. It was for a pretty good deal. And then I was looking around, and it looks like there was just a brand new edition released. It increases pixel density export functionality, like you can do Android, executables for Windows, Mac, iOS, and HTML5 for web. So that's pretty impressive. The two older kids went ahead and downloaded the free trial, it's like for 20 days, of RPG Maker MV, I believe it is. So they are now playing with that, and I'm super excited to see how they do with this new version, and I might end up having to buy 2 copies. But that's alright, I'm pretty excited that they're excited. So let's talk about this week. What's on the plate for this week's writing goals? Well, I'll tell you, I started reading a book by Libby Hawker. Now, she was one of the folks that I caught on a back episode of a podcast that I was listening to. And then, in my spare time, I went ahead and looked on YouTube to see if I could find any other interviews that she had done. Because, frankly, her audio on the podcast that I was listening to was crap. Craptastic. Watching on videos, this lady does not have good internet. I'm going to leave that there. She doesn't have good internet. That's just it. But what she was saying was pretty intriguing. So I took some time and I listened to what she had to say. And it turns out that she has a book out there called Taking Off Your Pants. And it's basically, you have 2 frames of mind usually when you're doing writing. There's the writing by the seat of your pants, which you don't have any real significant outline. And then you have more of a structured outline method. Now, I can tell you right now, Chlorophyllum 9, I do have notes on there, I do know where the story is going, but there's no official outline. So going into the novel, I knew that this was an issue, because that was the whole point originally. I had a short story that I decided to take in and take it to a novel. So I started writing the new chapters of the novel, and I realized, holy crap, there's a lot of this story that's in my head that the reader doesn't have access to. And I didn't really realize that just to the extent until I took a PDF copy of everything that I'd written, sent it to my Kindle, which is an awesome feature, by the way. Put it on that different format, and then read through. And all these questions started popping up in my mind. Like, that doesn't make sense. Hold on, wait a second. And I read it from, having that distance, that I hadn't read the short story for some time. So I had a whole new way of looking at the story. I had some distance, which really, really helped. And one thing I realized was that as a short story, Chlorophyllum 9 worked. But when you added it to the novel, there was a bit of a mismatch there as far as the novel format goes. Because in a short story, you don't always have time to stop and take a look at the characters you're dealing with. You're thrust into a plot element and you have your character that you're on their shoulder, or you're looking at the world through their point of view. But things are very much happening because the frame of a short story is so small. When you have a novel, you really have to kind of get to know your character. You have to build a relationship with them because you're going to be with them for some 300 pages. So I can tell you right now, if I had taken my original idea and had a theme and then branched that across the novel, the whole process would have been a lot smoother. But I'm learning here, and so that's okay. One thing I took away from the book was that having an outline and understanding your characters is very, very important. And while that might not be everybody's preference, it might not always be my preference, in this circumstance, it's very important. Because I have one segmented story, and then the novel really picks up at a part in the story and moves us back through and fills in a lot of the details to get you to that end punch that the short story has to have, which is now a novelette, I know. Please bear with me. It's going to take some time to get used to the idea that this short story is now almost 15,000 words. So my goals for this week is to do a character sketch outline for each of my main characters that I have so far, to understand what their personal flaws are, what their external goals are, and how that interacts with each of the other characters. Another goal is to start looking at the overall layout of the novel and piecing in where the plot points and story beats are going to exist. Now I've got part 1, which is done. 15,000 words, check. Part 2 is really taking us back in the story and filling in a lot of those details that we wish we knew when we were reading part 1. Now part 3 is where everything kind of coalesces. and comes to a head. We already have the major plot point of the end outlined in part 1, but there's a lot of details that we don't know. And that's one thing that I was able to build in when I was doing this rewrite, was that there are elements that can still be explored. There are different points of view in the story that as you're reading in point 1, you don't realize even exist. But as we build from part 2, those elements are going to start becoming more obvious. So then you start taking a look at part 1 with a very different viewpoint. And part 3 has to wrap that up and give you a good conclusion. Now, I also have a great idea for the epilogue, something that I have been thinking about for months. And I can tell you, it's going to be great. So I'm really excited about this story. Now, that's one of my concerns that I've had all along about outlining, is that I get excited about story elements, and then if I write them down, it kind of saps the energy. But that's one thing here that I'm dealing with now, is starting to realize that that doesn't have to be the case. Writing it down doesn't have to sap the energy. It just has to be enough to keep me going and to remember what it was about that scene or that thought process that had me so entranced. This week's goal, some outlining. I'm looking forward to letting you know how that goes next week. Now, there's another thing that I need to address, and I think that really became clear reading Libby's book, and that is my back blurb could really use a bit of work. So I'm going to start working on that this week, and I think what I need to do is take some of the elements from my outline, those core goals, the external goals and the personal flaws, and capitalize on that for a much better blurb of the story, to get the reader to invest right from the get-go. Well, that's it for this week. You can tell that the video format was quite different. While this takes a lot more work, I think that it more suits my style. I'm a bit weird, and I'm not going to deny it, and I think that's okay. The people who can appreciate it will like and subscribe to my videos, and will probably like my storytelling. So, signing off for this week, R. Brady Frost. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Thank you, and keep hunting the muse.
It wasn't very good, was it? I didn't like it, no. I thought it was rather odd. Rather odd indeed. Oh, he's looking at us. He's a ninja vanish! Cow ninja vanish! Oh.